Hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And the video today is, no, they aren't all just jokes. What I mean by that is, a lot of times when there's some sort of a controversy with respect to something that a comedian might have said, a lot of other comedians might come in and say, oh, it's just a joke. And no, they aren't just a joke. Let's say, for example, if somebody's in blackface, it's just paint. No, it's not just paint. If there's a sign that says no X, Y, or Z, it's not just a sign. There are certain things that, yeah, they're just words, but you can get locked up for a long time probably for saying some of them. And even though jokes and comedy is meant to be funny, we have to admit that you have to take, a lot of times, if you're joking about a particular topic, it's a good idea to wait a certain period before you make that joke in front of a certain affected party. Or it might be that a certain person is better equipped to make a particular joke. I think that it's too often that a lot of comedians, and in one example I would be like D.L. Hughley. I think D.L. Hughley was having an interview with Vlad somebody, a guy named Vlad who does a lot of interviews with hip-hop artists and so on, and comedians. And D.L. Hughley had made a joke, I think, about Princess Leia, the lady who had played Princess Leia, and the fact that her mother had died soon after she had died. And he'd said something like, black people don't die when their children die, they just keep on moving, or something like that. And in certain circles, that would have been a hilarious joke, In other circles, it wouldn't have. Unfortunately, he had it public for everybody to see, and some people were offended by it. But I don't know that I have a specific example that I want to point to, but in general, there are a lot of people who are in therapy because of things that were just jokes. Something might start off. In one specific instance, I remember D.L. Hughley was making the observation that comedy, in some ways, came from the court jester. And the court jester was, I have to say that I hate when we go back in the past and we go back at that medieval king and jester, as if that's the only past that we have to go back to. That's a whole nother story. But he was saying that the jester is the only person who could speak the truth to the king because he did it through comedy. And sometimes the jester got executed. I mean, as long as you're going to give an analogy like that, let's go right back to the facts of what actually happened. The jester didn't always get away with it. Sometimes he got killed because of the jokes that he made. It wasn't every time that he got away with it. And even if you look at, in Star Wars, there's the Force. The Force is this great, fantastic thing. But the Sith use it. As fantastic as the Force is, as amazing, as powerful, as the fact that it's in every single life form as the Force is, the Sith use it. They are the Sith. So what is the Force? What is comedy? We can say, yes, comedy makes people laugh, that's great, but people can laugh at something for all of the wrong reasons. I mean, just because people are laughing, it doesn't mean that it's good. If you have a knife and it's cutting something, just because it's cutting, just because it is doing what it was made to do, it doesn't mean if it cuts a piece of bread, it's great. If it cuts your arm, it isn't. Comedy should not, we shouldn't just, the way that comedians sometimes frame comedy, it's like, as long as people are laughing, it's all good. Some people could be laughing as they're marching somebody to the execution. They could be laughing as they stone someone to death. The fact that something is funny doesn't mean it's something that you should do. And I don't even really want to go into the idea of some of these comedians that, they come out and maybe they've made some kind of joke that it becomes off color. Like if you look back, it was fine then, and if you look now, there's a problem with it. I think that there was always a problem with it. It's just that people didn't care that these are the people who were being hurt by it, that we didn't care as much because those people weren't as vocal. They weren't allowed to be as vocal under pain of death threats and whatever else. If it's a homosexual joke that you could have made and you can't make it now, those people were under threats of physical violence to come out and be gay and proud. So now that they are out and proud and gay, and they have their gay pride marches, now, the pendulum is swung in the opposite direction, and, you have to be concerned. No, you should have always been concerned about individuals. If you ever stop to think, okay, if it were me, how would I feel about it? Then you'll realize that it probably was something that you should never have done. And it's sometimes kind of sad that you see comedians that understand when people come after them, and they're like, that's not fair that they came after me, it was just a joke, and da-da-da-da-da. But when you go after someone else, and you made a joke that injures that person, or hurts their feelings, don't you see that that's why they're coming after you? You hurt someone, and now they want to hurt you. Now, if they shouldn't have taken it as a big deal when you made that joke, then maybe you shouldn't make it much of a big deal when they come back at you. Because do they have a gun to your head? No. They're complaining, they're suggesting that you be fired from this or that or the other. Hey, sometimes the jester got his head cut off. The king wasn't always going to take whatever the jester was going to dish out. The king is the king. And maybe once he'll take it, maybe twice, then maybe you need to cool out. Maybe you need to chill out. Maybe you need to joke about somebody else. So, and when you research comedian and comedy, one of the things that I think it was Sarah Silverman, she was saying, or maybe it wasn't, she was in this special that I was looking at, and it was this, I don't know if it's a joke-telling exercise or a joke-telling tradition that comedians have, where they try to string together the nastiest jokes that you could think of, the most vile, disgusting. I think it might have been a joke-telling custom that they would do amongst themselves when it's a bunch of comedians. They would have this thing where they said, stop dealing with incest and misogyny and Jewish, but it wasn't something for the general public. It was just something that maybe comedians still do. I'm not certain whether they stopped or not. I can't remember the name of what this thing was called Otherwise, I would bring it up. But I think it was in some comedy special that I was looking at where they were discussing the habits of comedians and things that comedians do. And you know what? As an exercise, as a tradition, I think it has its place. But we do have to worry in the same way that is this a tradition that is giving power to the dark side of the force, the dark side of comedy? Is this something that maybe should die? I don't know if it still continues, but maybe it should die. And I think that comedians, I once looked up a definition of comedy or a definition of a joke, and it seemed to be, as I recall it, the juxtaposition of two things that don't normally go together. The same way that a pun works. If you take, for example, the only thing I can think of is my own jokes. Let me think. Well, the only thing I can think of is, I remember there's a joke that I had made, which was, now let's just get to the elephant in the room. And then I said, oh my, I'm so sorry, sir, for thinking that you were an elephant. And then I was like, oh, whoa, I am so sorry, ma'am, for thinking that you were sir, that was an elephant. And in that, if I'm to try to break it down, I know some people might think it's funny, some people might not, but it's a juxtaposition between that phrase, that saying, the elephant in the room, with the idea of me thinking that someone is so unattractive that they actually, a man that I thought was an elephant, juxtapositioning the phrase with the fact that somebody could be that ugly, with the fact that not only might they be that unattractive, but I was fooled twice in two different ways. So it's like a triple juxtaposition, and it's of things that don't normally go together. You have a saying, an elephant in the room means a certain issue, but I'm using it in another way. And that's what comedy should be. I think that if you look hard at anything and you try to use that concept of juxtapositioning things that don't normally go together, that's where you get your comedy from. I think you can make fun of anything like that. I think there's a never-ending ways that you can make ordinary, everyday things funny. And there's no need to mock anyone. There's no need to make fun of a group or a person or yourself directly. It's just a general way of speaking that nobody needs to feel hurt. Obviously, in that situation, some people might feel hurt, where they might think, oh, people have mocked me and said that I look like an animal, so maybe that's what it's about with me. But that would be somebody. There would be no way to look in the audience and think, oh, this person would be offended by it, or at least to my mind. Maybe if somebody feels that they're as big as an elephant, maybe that person might be like, oh my God, they were talking about me. But there's so many other features of an elephant, like a big nose and all of this other stuff, and big ears that are very, very, they stand out. That hopefully I didn't say gorilla. So in that case, to me, I think those are the jokes that they never need to age. They never need to come to the point where we're like, oh, we don't make fun of that anymore. We don't make fun of these people anymore. Like if the way people used to mock people who are mentally challenged. If you're hurting someone or you could hurt someone, those jokes might be so funny. And I know I've laughed at some of those. And if there was a video of me 5 years from now laughing at that joke, I think I would just have to take the hit and say, yeah, that was wrong. It was funny, but it was wrong. But I think that we have a lot of other ways that we can do things so that we don't end up in a situation where someone feels hurt by something that we said now or ever. Anyway, guys, as usual, wish me lucks. You can like or unlike. You can comment, subscribe, and or share. Peace.